You don't understand. We don't do math, right? We just do osmosis.
2 times 0 is still 0.
But I'm still doubling your pay, so it's still a win.
That's fine.
All right, so
Whatever
you
you
should
have
be
to tell
thankful
yourself so
your
you
pay.
sleep at night.
Like, I doubled your pay. What more do you want? But we're not here to argue about your paycheck problems, all right? So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. There's 3 nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. And we promise maybe even halfway through, Doc might sober up. We don't know. A place where magic is king.
You just called them problems.
Well, I mean, 99 bottles and whatever. Isn't that how the cadence goes? A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. And without further ado, to save us from our shenanigans, and this is why we didn't pre-record all of the intros, because this kind of shenanigans couldn't happen if we didn't make it up as we went along. We're going to introduce you to our guest, Miss Janice J.A. Andrews, is how she publishes. So, Janice, could you introduce yourself to the listening and viewing audience, please?
There's 2 things about author interviews that should be super simple and they just suck. One is introducing yourself and the other is like give your 30-second spiel about your book.
Oh, that's coming too.
I know it's coming and I'm already like I should have planned, but I didn't. So here we go. I am a mother of 3, married. I live in Montana and I write epic fantasy. Like I grew up in the 80s and 90s with like super classic fantasy. And I just deeply love all the old tropes and stuff. So anyway, a lot of that influenced my books. So yeah, epic fantasy. I homeschool my kids. We live
you're a patient saint.
Well, they're old now. They're not old. They're like between.
Don't worry,
and
they
15.
probably won't listen.
No, they won't. They're like
10-year-olds
12,
think
15.
they're old.
Yes.
I have a 9-year-old. He thinks he's mature.
Mm-hmm. They've become like really self-sufficient and amazing. So years ago, it was like a lot of work to homeschool, but now it's pretty dope, actually. So I almost feel guilty about the little bit of leading they need to do stuff, but they're having fun and it's going well. And my oldest actually just wrote 100,000 word fan fiction for Warrior Cats and is awesome. So I'm claiming it was like this homeschool win and that I really led him down this path, but he did it.
It's almost like he's a rocket scientist or something.
See,
it is.
I was just eyeing the Warrior Cats and thinking I couldn't decide if it was a boy or a girl series from a young male's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It seems to be just sort of like across the board, all kids love it.
Okay.
And okay, I'm not a cat person, and like so I'm just kind of like what? And cats die like nonstop in this series. Like my kids are constantly sad because some cat is dying. Like there's all these cat battles and they're always dying.
Why? That's kind of macabre.
It's kind of dark, but
yeah.
Okay.
They have like clans and clan wars and there's bad clans and it's very in-depth. There's like this very in-depth world that's been created and kids will love it. So,
no, there's shelves and shelves at Barnes & Noble about it.
Yeah.
Barnes & Noble are still a thing? Wow.
JR, you will die.
They're not a thing around here anymore.
She's not Team Bezos. She's just not. But so is it true that you see Yeti on a regular basis and you had to sign some sort of non-disclosure agreement so you didn't write about him?
Exactly. Yeah, about 2 years ago, we bought some land in Montana in the mountains. And so we're like deep in the forests and it's awesome. And no, I can't confirm whether we've seen Yetis, but bears and mountain lions and things that are thankfully like the mountain lion anyway was like on a camera on our property, not like in front of us. But like the second or third night we were here, we were still in a camper actually. Whoa. And a bear came walking down our street. Like our driveway that had been dug in. Yeah. We were just like, it was shocking.
See, that sounds
and then we made noise and he took off and it like the story really fizzles out there after we saw the bear. But
before you made the noise, your husband had to go wrestle into the ground and be like, look, this is my property now. You get the heck off my land. It was totally legit.
It's that infantry thing. JR knows how to spin the yarn into something.
That's what happened.
If I
Yeah.
did a little better, I would have made staff sergeant, but instead I was honest. That didn't work out for me.
Never pays.
No, it
I
doesn't.
have a whole living from lying all the time. Just make stuff up.
Yeah, you get one little colonel who asks your opinion, and you think he really wants your opinion, but no, what he wants is you to repeat his opinion back to him to confirm what he thinks he already knows. It didn't end well. The good news was he was nice and he let me shred my E6 packet instead of doing it himself. So that was a little touch of something special, I guess.
See, that's why I just told them always, "You lead the way, sir."
Yeah, that's what I
And then
get
they
for
just stare at
thinking.
me, not sure if I was being sarcastic or not.
You could get away with that when you're an E4. Not so much once you're a sergeant and they expect you to actually have like tactical opinions and shit stuff. Sorry.
I know, it was glorious.
That's the downside. You get promoted too high and you just got to actually work or something.
Mafia for life, baby.
All right. I should have stayed there. All right. So the next part of the introduction, dear listener, is how we first met Janice. And so I actually met her at a Yeti recovery convention. We were talking about what we weren't allowed to talk about. Non-disclosure agreements were signed with the people at Area 52. It's like Area 51, but cooler. And so, yeah, we can't really talk about how we met, but you know now that we didn't tell. Like, we didn't tell you what we didn't tell you. But what about you, Doc?
I actually met her through a mutual acquaintance who we've had on the show, Bryce O'Connor, and he was like, "Hey, Blasters and Blades would love to bring in some new people. Who wants in?" And she was smart enough to.
That's a good way to do it. So we actually the Yeti thing came because Montana, but apparently people actually write like Bigfoot romance novels. I thought it was a joke.
Yes, they do.
And then I checked the KDP Rocket, which is now Publishers Rocket. I'm like, holy smokes, this is really a thing. I thought people were just messing with me.
Yep.
So now it fascinates me, the kind of like, not so much the stories, because whatever, but like the people that would read and write the stories. I'm like, it's like a whodunit.
Yes, that has been a topic of Boinking Beasties.
I was a little bit like, I don't know. I felt a little weird after listening to that panel, Doc. I got to be honest with you. So I don't know. Maybe everyone on that panel should talk to their doctor. Just saying. All right, Doc. We get to ask her the religion questions and see if she gets to stick around.
Awesome. Ooh. So if you had to pick one of these three sci-fi properties, which one would you pick? Last Starfighter, Enemy Mine, or Dune?
Because 1980s was a good decade.
Dude, Last Starfighter. Yeah.
Excellent choice.
Because, when you go, then they make that clone of you that stays here and like does all the crap work you're supposed to do, but you get to go.
Right?
And
right.
Then they ruin your romances because they get it wrong and they repeat the wrong things, which was kind of funny.
It is funny.
So that was.
I have no romances. They can just take over. It won't be a problem.
But what if they messed up in the lab because they didn't understand human chemistry?
There is no thing of human chemistry. It's just, unless you're talking like the biochemistry of the body, of the human body.
Well,
I do analytical chemistry, and iodine's going to react the same way everywhere.
No, it's not. You don't know that. Have you been to Mars and tried it there? No, you have not. It's possible. Your little science going to try to tell me how things go. I make it up. I know.
I'm with Doc on this one. But
I also you're really a rocket scientist. I know. I spied on you.
I am. I didn't even include that, but it's true, and it's not true. I that's what my degree's in. I've never done it.
That's fine. Your degree is infinitely better than his degree.
Look, history degrees are entirely valid. All right. Colonial America was a very important time period to study. And anyone that could disagree with me is dead, so they don't count.
It was, but it's not one of those skills degrees.
I mean, I can research with the
bachelor's of arts because you're frou-frou-y.
Hey, all right, I could research with the best of them, just on dead people. It's like that boy in that movie. I see dead people everywhere. All right, Doc, we got one more religion question to see if she sticks around.
Okay. Aragon, Dragon, or Dragon Slayer?
What was the second one?
Dragonheart.
So I haven't actually read. So I started Aragon, but like it was like I was too old, really. I wasn't like young enough to like just grab it and be excited about it.
I think there's a sweet spot for Aragon.
I think there is. And like if you read it during that spot, then you just love it forever, like nostalgically or maybe for real. I don't know. But I was too old. And so I was like, okay. I mean, it was fine. Like I'm not like one of those people that's like gonna hate on it. But I'll pick that one because that one's I'm at least familiar with.
I
Fat,
love
right?
Dragonheart. And I think my brothers would disown me if I said anything other than Dragonheart on that question.
Well, I mean, your
Well,
brothers
then
really have excellent taste. That was my favorite too.
Yes, and
So-
we have the entire Dragonheart, all the Dragonheart movies, because there were sequels.
There were. I didn't know there
were.
were sequels.
Yes,
There
there
were.
were sequels.
So given what you write, I figured we would go with themed questions as much as possible. But since you can't put dragons in sci-fi, Doc,
Yes,
there
you
were no
can.
movies for that.
What kind of weird pot are you smoking again?
I mean, just good stuff. It's
You're
okay.
supposed to smoke it, not chew it.
Well, now you tell me that wasn't in the directions. Anyway, moving right along. You know what, Janice? You're very lovely. Would you like a job? We'll fire Doc. You could be the co-host. It'll be okay.
I've seen her fired like 3 times in like the 3 episodes I've seen of you, and she's still here.
I know.
She tries to cut us. And
he
Nick
doesn't
Garber's
have
so afraid of
very
her. He's
good
in witness protection right now. True story. Nick, if you're listening, you could come out. It's safe now.
It's not. Anyway, so as everybody knows, we love both sci-fi and fantasy, but which was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Really just fantasy. I mean, I just grew up reading like everything. Not Barnes and Noble, Walden Books at the mall.
I remember that.
I remember
babysitting
Walden
money.
Books. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, it was
I
great.
went to Walden
so
Books.
I just read.
I used to walk to Walden Books. I remember one time there was one near my house, and my mom goes, "I don't want to go to the store. Yeah, so you're on your own to go get your book." And I went, "Okay." And I walked down, and I was leaving the neighborhood. It's only a mile. I'm good. My mother kind of freaked out. She was like, "No, come back here."
Never mind.
We used to do that. But I remember when Barnes and Nobles made the shift.
That next book.
I remember when Barnes and Nobles made the shift when they were just a bookstore to when they became a toy store that sometimes had books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you quit hating?
I'm not hating, but I went in there the other day with the kid, and it was like 2/4 or 2/3 of the store space was all like toys and stuff.
Nope. There's only one little, like, maybe 25% of my Barnes and Noble.
Well, your Barnes and Noble is not my Barnes and Noble.
Is toys. My Barnes and Noble is a 2-story at Barnes and Noble.
Well, we're not that cool, okay? We're 1 story, but we've got a decent coffee shop, so I guess there's that.
It's nice to have the coffee.
Yep. It is nice to have the coffee.
Yeah.
But
the only sci-fi I ever
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi I ever was in like drawn into, and I don't know that I have anything against sci-fi. I was just like super fantasy nerd, but like my parents were always like, "There's better things to do than watch TV." Except on Saturday nights when we'd have pizza, and my mom loved Star Trek Next Generation. And so we would watch like, I don't even care like what show it was. I would have loved it because we got to watch TV during dinner. So that was like awesome. And yeah, so I mean, I probably watched like every episode of that show ever.
You know, I expected you to be like, yeah, sci-fi was totally my first love. I don't know how I ended up writing fantasy when I saw that you were legitimately went to school for rocket sciences. I don't know how, like, yeah, I hate sci-fi. I'm like, wait, what?
No, she didn't say she hates sci-fi.
I know, I'm exaggerating. It's called hyperbole.
She did science fiction. She did science. Sometimes you need a break.
Okay. So
it does have a lot less like wonder to it because I'm like, well, you know, like, yeah, I had to do a big test on how that would actually work, and it works, or theoretically it would work, and I don't know, it loses something, and I know that's terrible. Like sci-fi people are like, what? But
no, I actually totally understand it because I had somebody who was like, here, read this book, science fiction book, and because you're a chemist, and I'm like, their chemistry sucks. No, but that's not how and I'm like, okay, I need to put this away and go binge read some Mercedes Lackey for a bit.
But
That'll help.
I guess I kind of get it. I got the Bachelor's of Arts and I write sci-fi. She's got the science degree and she leads the fantasy track. So maybe there's something to this.
I just love that. I look at people all the time when they ask me stuff at DragonCon, and I went, I do fantasy. I don't do science. And somebody once asked why everybody giggles every time I say that.
So speaking of giggling, you mentioned that you had pizza over the Star Trek. So how do you take your pizza? This is an important question for this podcast.
Well, pepperoni and mushrooms actually is the
That's
ideal
an excellent choice.
pizza. Yeah.
How do you feel about pineapples desecrating the holy pizza?
I actually like it, but I mean, it's not like I'd pick it if there were pepperoni and mushrooms there. But if there was no pepperoni and mushrooms, I would pineapple. Like pineapple's good on. It's just good. So you make it hot, it's still good.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, if I wasn't afraid Doc would cut me, I'd be kicking everyone that said that out of the podcast. But she does threaten to stab
That's
me on a
just
fairly
because
regular basis.
we wouldn't have a podcast because I'd have to go do one without you.
She threatens to stab me on a pretty regular basis off show people. I might need an intervention. Please send help. All right.
Don't send help. He likes it.
What was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction? Was it watching that Star Trek with your family, or was it, reading books, playing games? Where do you remember discovering the field of spec fic?
Reading, definitely. My brother was he's 4 years older than me, and he was a big fantasy book nerd also. And so he had a big bookshelf. I'm not sure it was really big. In my childhood mind, it was a big bookshelf. But he gave me the Belgariad by David Eddings at some point when I was looking for something to read.
Excellent.
And I was I just had never been so sucked into anything in my life. I just loved it.
Totally understand that. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good answer. So what is it about the field of speculative fiction that you love?
It's the rockets. That's what she loves.
All the rockets and the science. I think I love that there's like these two different aspects of it. Like the first one is that there's like still this sense of wonder in the world because you're usually with the character, you're sort of discovering some kind of magic or something you just couldn't have even comprehended happening, and it's happening. And so that's really cool because, the real world, you don't encounter that all that often. It's just like cell phones and computers, and that's boring. And the other thing I really like about it is I love how you can talk about real world issues, but when you put it in a fantasy world, it's somehow like not as threatening. Like it's not, like you were sort of born on this side of this issue and now you have to look at it. But if it's between elves and dwarves, then you can kind of talk about these issues and these relationships and things that have to happen that in our world would be really tense. But when you set them in a different world, I just feel like you can explore a lot more what's really going on and maybe find some solutions. I don't know if the real world.
You can have those conversations that might with real world identities start just getting too emotionally heavy to actually see and talk calmly about.
Yeah.
I'll accept that as an answer. All right. So how did your love of speculative fiction? Hey, I am the arbiter of all things right about science and science fiction. And clearly she is not, because she puts pineapple on the sacred pizza pie.
I'm digging my way out of that.
It's okay. Doc likes you, so I can't kick you. Like I said, she's threatened to stab me on a regular basis. So how did your love of science speculative? What's that?
You like it.
Shh, don't tell everybody. How did your love of speculative fiction as a genre transition into you writing stories in this space?
That is a good question because I feel like every author I talked to was like, I wanted to be an author since I was 5 and blah, blah. And I totally didn't. I really like science. I did engineering. Like I did math. And I always loved reading, but I don't think it ever occurred to me ever that you can have a career as an author. Like authors were these distant magical beings, right? They weren't like real people who you could It wasn't until I was married. I had taken like a couple random creative writing classes that were really focused on traditional publishing and querying and trying to get short stories into magazines, like that kind of path. And the query letters thing, just like the idea just like crushed my soul, and I couldn't bring myself to wanting to do that. So I kind of forgot the whole publishing idea. But my husband actually went out of town for a month. And so he was on a rotation in Philadelphia somewhere, and he was really bored. And this was like a long time ago. We had email. I don't even remember if we had cell phones. So I would to entertain him because he was so bored, I would like write a chapter each night and send it to him. And like my goal was to try and make the characters fun, and then to kind of leave him on a cliffhanger every night so that it like tortured him just a little bit. And
It's like
so
1001 Arabian Nights, but not so he didn't kill you, just to keep him entertained.
exactly, it was like a nice
like it.
version of that. Yeah. And so
that's like really sweet love letters.
Yeah, exactly. With like some creepy
orcs and goblins and elves,
people dying, and
yes, you do.
Yeah, so yeah. So anyway, it took me, that was years and years ago, but we came back home and we had one kid and I was pregnant. There was all this, so there were all these babies. So I didn't do anything for years, but those characters just kind of like always kind of hung around in my head, and I liked them all. And so when I finally found out indie publishing was a thing in like 2012, probably, I decided maybe I'd try and turn those chapters into a book, and realized I knew nothing about writing at all. And so it took till 2016 in July when I published my first book. But the beginning of that book are the first chapters, deeply, deeply edited, that I had sent him when he was far away.
Nice. 2016 was a good year when a lot of people seemed to have entered into the market. That's when I published my first book too.
Did you? Yeah, it was a great year.
It's a great year. It's great vintage, Doc.
Exactly.
You say so.
We hadn't fired you yet, though, so you were probably still distracted. I mean, hired, of course. Don't worry, we'll triple your pay today. All right, so
he uses those like totally interchangeably. Fired, hired, double paid, whatever.
Whatever, it's convenient. So many authors let their own real life experiences influence the way they tell stories. So were there any moments that shaped the kind of stories you tell? Was it watching your husband wrestle that bear?
Yeah. And I was like, I need a bear wrestling scene in my books. No, but you'll see. So first time we moved to Montana, we moved a bunch, but we moved to Montana like 8 years ago, and I was writing my first book, and you see them, we're in the mountains, right? So it's like pine forests and beautiful rivers and all that stuff. And so in that book, everybody's traveling through that kind of land and they love it, and everything nature is great and everything in the city sucks, right? Like it's just there. And then we actually had spent a couple years in Great Falls, Montana, which is like way over on the plains. And so you're surrounded by grass and there's no mountains. And the second book of that series, which isn't even the series we're talking about, the main character is like stuck on these grasslands and he hates it. And he just is always talking about how like boring it is. So if you read my books, you can tell probably where I was living at the time, depending on whether my characters are like, yes, we're in the forest, this is great, or like, oh, there's more grass. Yeah.
I mean, I understand that feeling. I've had that feeling about sand.
Yeah.
Yes. I can relate.
I bet.
So, all right, Doc, it's time to redeem yourself and see if you're going to get that triple pay bonus today.
I am, but you get half pay. So
damn it.
So transitioning to some of the fan stuff, have you had any cool fan art or a cosplay of one of your characters yet?
I have, there's a poem I need to think about which book we're talking about here. Okay, the book we're talking about today, Dragon's Reach. There's a poem where this one character, she's in this like priory world, right? This religious world. She's not super involved in it, but one of the other characters has lost her family. They were all killed. And so she has this sort of prayer that she says for this lost family. And I had a reader send me an email and ask if it was okay if he composed music for it, because he's in a choir that actually on Veterans Day every year does a performance. And so they wanted to like use the words in a song, like in memory of all the veterans who had passed away. And so I thought that was super cool. So he sent me a recording of it and everything. It's really cool.
Oh, would you please share that with us? Because we would love that to hear it.
Yeah, I need to make sure, like I had tried to upload it on my website once and it didn't work, and then life happened and I never got around to it. But I will, as soon as I get it up, I will like send you guys. It's really cool.
So, because that's really touching, and that's a wonderful tribute both to your work.
Yeah, I was just like really like moved that he even thought it was good. Yeah.
So while we are talking about the first book in the Dragon's Reach series today, or Dragon's Reach was the first book in the series, as far as these questions, they're a little bit more broad. So if you've gotten from other series or books that you've written, that's perfectly acceptable at this point. So we try to structure the interview, getting to know you, trying not to hate you if you like pineapple on pizza. Then we talk about the books.
Gotcha.
So we got a method to our madness, maybe.
That's normally my line.
You've corrupted me with your science and crap.
I when people look at me, I'm like, there's a method to my madness. Just answer this question.
For me, there's just madness, but it's okay.
Anybody
Writing is my
who's known me more
therapy.
than 5 years normally looks at me and goes, I'm afraid.
You should be. All right, but we're going to let her
So,
answer the question. So,
has anyone asked for your autograph out in public, book signings, conventions, in a particularly funny way?
So I actually, like, my first really good year of selling books was 2019, which was great. But then 2020 is probably where I would have like gone to do stuff like in public and at cons.
We all know how well that ended, right?
Yeah, that's going just great. So
by the way, my New Year's resolution for 2020 actually was to be more social and go out and do stuff.
The whole universe was against you.
I know.
So there's been I mean, like, people have reached out online. That's about as close as we all get, right, these days. But so I do have I hadn't even had any books around to like keep and sign. It, like, being an author, so it's like surreal, right? Like, I like write the book by myself and it gets edited and stuff, but then like it's just weird still that other people read them and then they're like,
well, hopefully
can I have
you
a signed
some
copy for
appearances
Christmas
coming up?
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. We should totally get you out to some conventions.
Definitely. Yes.
But there are people at conventions, Doc. You know how I feel about people.
I didn't say that you should go. I said she should go.
I know. But
Okay.
I'm just weighing my objection to people in general, and then we can move on.
Okay.
We'll have pineapple pizza while we're there.
You're killing me. Janice,
We
we
will.
were
All
friends
the
for
more
5
reason.
seconds. I heard you are a rocket scientist. I'm like, she's my people. And she's like, nope, torpedo idea.
I could have told you she wasn't your people because math is involved in rocket science.
Look, all right, I do math just fine. It's just when you start putting those weird letters in math problems, it's not math anymore.
And how many people go to Dragon Con, JR?
52.
1,000.
52. 52,000 is not a real number. It's a government conspiracy.
Okay. So, have you spotted anybody out reading your books, with binoculars in Montana or something like that?
No, but I have two. I'd be more likely to find some sort of kettle, probably. I think we have more cattle than people, maybe not. That I know Wyoming does. We might actually have enough people, but I do have 2 different friends who have sent me emails, like, just super excited because they were either in a friend's house or one of them. He's like a handyman and he was doing work at someone's house and he walked by the banister and their railing and my book was sitting there with like a bookmark in it and he was like, oh, I know that author. I mean, like, no, right? 2020, no. And and I was like, shut up. Like, you really, like, in real life, you a real person? So I was super stoked. I was like,
that's
for weeks.
awesome.
That's both cool and I can empathize because I only have 2 friends also.
Yeah, right. Just 2.
And I'm not one of them.
No. I mean, you just tried to stab me. I don't know if that's where friendships are starting, Doc. I think we need to do a little intervention. But
oh, you know what? They can listen to the archives and find out where our friendship really started.
There was booze involved.
There always is.
There's always is. All right. So this is where we talk about everything Janice, as publishing as J.A. Andrews, has written. So can you give us the Reader's Digest of your body of work?
Yes, I am way more, I could say boring. We call it streamlined than other authors. All of my work is in the same world. It's all the same magic. It's just all the same. I'm not fast. I write like a book a year, so I don't have time. Like, so many authors I know write like so many different amazing things, and I'm still trucking on my one line here. But I have my first trilogy is the Keeper Chronicles, and the Keepers are like the sort of center of this world. They're the magic wielders, and magic's not very common, so they're unusual. But they're also like historians and storytellers, and so they live sort of separated. So they're not like trying to influence politically or anything, but they seriously love books so much and stories and history, and they like travel as storytellers too, but they like collect stories from the people and stuff like that. So and so they have this huge library in a land that doesn't have very many libraries. So my first trilogy is each book is a different keeper, and they're loosely related. There's an overarching storyline, but it's each one just sort of dealing with like usually the world ends up being at stake, but each one is really like a pretty personal journey from one of them. Like the first one, his wife has gotten, she was poisoned, and he can't find a cure. And these are like the most knowledgeable people in the land, right? So anyway, he can't find a cure. And so he's like magically got her in this like coma, right? So she can't get worse. And he's been searching and searching for this cure. And he's done some like really dark stuff trying to find this cure for her. And in general, the keepers are like the good guys. They don't go down the dark paths. And so he's like very torn about whether he's still a keeper or not. And so his story is he has this one last chance to find something that might actually save her. And so he's on a quest to see if he can find that. But the whole time the world is like, we really need you to be a keeper and you need to be back. And he's like, so there's this big internal struggle with him as to whether he deserves to be, this idea of like what we turned out to be as adults compared to what we assumed we would be as adults, which are really different from each other. So anyway, each book is like that.
I think that's a great thing to talk about. I know I was talking with some other adult fantasy authors.
Wait, adult fantasy or adult fantasy?
They're adults writing fantasy, but they do focus on adult literature. But talking about kind of, YA is great, and they have a lot of those coming of age stories, and there's a lot of fantasy where that is by the nature of like, because most fantasy is based off the Renaissance, most characters' adulthood was much younger than what we do it as now. But that there weren't these adult stories about, one of them point out her series is about somebody who's been in this field who has burnout. She's been a demon slayer and she's dealing with burnout and, being a single mom and a demon slayer. So these different stories that are adult stories that we can relate to as adults because we're going through some of those same things. And I think that's awesome. I love that.
So much. There's so much in fantasy about like growing into like who you could be, right? There's this idea of like, if you're the chosen one or you're whatever, you're going to be a demon slayer. There's this discovering who you can be and getting into that. But I mean, like for most of us that are over like 25, that time has passed. And now we have another 60 years of realizing like, am I who I want to be? And if I set off on one path, like did that path lead me where I wanted to go? Like, I feel like it's a huge chunk of life that we can talk about.
So I actually, Katie has said, when Katie Cross, we talked about her a little bit in the pre-show. She's a friend of the show. When she came on, she talked about something I'd heard in the infantry before too, that if you want to win the war, you don't send the 18-year-old privates that got no idea of what's going on in life and no fear. You send the 40-year-old, 3-time divorced NCO who's got like 2 years before he can retire and no F's to give. That's who you send, and the war will be over in a week. I've heard that, that old line, it's in the old retirees because they've got, a lot of rage and their trigger finger still works. I think that works in fantasy too. Having lived a somewhat adventurous life in my youth, dodging bullets and the like I look at some of the stuff I did back then and I'm like, man, I was an idiot. There were so many better ways to skin that cat, right? Like, and so I think about the world, if the world is really at stake, which is, it's common in sci-fi and fantasy. So it's sort of, I think, a universal trope of spec fic. Do you really want the 18-year-old who apparently just found out not only are he or she a royal, but they also just lost their parents, No, by the way, their parents aren't really their parents, but there's also the love triangle with the two people who maybe they love, and they like, no, they got too much shit going on. Like, let the grown-ups handle it. You go sit down in the nursery.
Oh no. Yeah, no, I went back to school as an adult and I had somebody go, "You're always so honest." And I'm like, I do not have time to deal with the bullshit of not being honest. It is just so much easier to just be honest. And they're like, "You're never dealing with the drama." And I'm like, I have real drama.
No drama.
Your drama's not real. Yes.
Like, I'm sorry, whether or not you change your name after you get married to the guy who hasn't even proposed yet, that's really not drama. That's really not. I have important drama.
Yeah.
Like, I have that IEP meeting I got to go to after this test. So let's start.
So I realized we missed an opportunity, Doc, when she was talking about the autograph section. We didn't ask her if she used her super secret Illuminati space program contacts to use the satellite system to spy on people, because that is an opportunity not other authors we have interviewed have had.
I'm sorry. I don't normally think people spy on people. I just let you do the internet stalking.
Like, I just call it research. You don't have to call it spying. Research.
It falls under the Yeti umbrella. I can't really talk.
Oh, that's true.
That.
I forgot about the NDAs. Governments get real finicky about that stuff. All right. So then, while all of that work that you've talked about, the universe sounds very fascinating. Today we're going to talk about Dragon's Reach, an epic fantasy adventure, which is that's the whole title. It's a mouthful, people. This is the first novel in the Keeper Origins series. So where did you get the premise for this universe? Was it that time you wrote those letters to your husband? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, too much pure mountain air? Come on, how'd you come up with it?
It was drinking rocket fuel. Sorry, wait, that was whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interchangeable, right?
There's a little bit of each involved. That was really in stages. Yeah. Those first stories, those first chapters really started it. And then the fact that those characters were all storytellers and historians. That whole first series is full of them referencing stories and history and blah, blah, blah. So the second...
History is cool.
It is. Although fake history is more fun, maybe, than real history.
I mean, if you study history long enough, you realize a lot of it is fake.
That's true. That's true.
You know what?
Sometimes
I'm going to say this one. I had a history teacher who is very disappointed because I could not keep my King Henry's and James's straight. But I could tell her the entire history of Pern or Darkover or the Valdemar universe by Mercedes Lackey. And I did make one very good point to her. They all had unique names without numbers behind them.
This is fair.
Yes.
And you care, which also helps.
But if you're doing American history, though, then you're in a better shape because at least we don't continually do the same names.
So, but we were doing non-U.S. history that year.
And some of the boring names
every country not in the North America or South America that year.
Yeah.
And we don't reuse the boring names like Ezekiel. Nobody does that anymore.
Ezekiel's not a boring name. It's a fun name. Just don't ask me how to spell it.
I don't know either. There are some names that you just spell so badly, even spell checks like, what the F, dude? Like, no, I'm not doing this. But all right, so this is the cool part of the interview where we get to talk about the cover. So can you tell us how you came up with the cover for this one?
Yeah, so I have this thing. I have trouble with like a lot of people on covers, a lot.
Yes.
And there are some super cool covers with peoples, like there are peoples, yes, with peoples. But like a symbol cover, like I just really love symbol covers. So
it's like a dragon using its tail.
Yeah. So Deranged Doctor Designs did these actually, and they did great. And so we did like there's these 3 priories in the so this whole series is the series that tells the story of the very first keepers and the very first queen of the country that they live in, which is called Queensland, which is not Australian at all. This is what happens when you write a book that you weren't ever intentionally going to publish, like a long time ago, that you put these names in and then later you're like, I totally would have changed that had I realized I was going to make a whole life off of this series. But anyway, it's called Queensland, named after their queen. So there's these priories.
I thought you were going to be like, it's named after the king. We call it Queensland.
Exactly. He wasn't as
important.
important.
Do that for you, JR.
Ouch.
yeah, so it was really cool to just be able to put like the kind of churchy looking stuff in the middle and symbols. I just love symbols.
So,
And
is there any significance to the reference to the Ouroboros, the snake eating itself, and you get the dragon eating itself?
not
Was that
really.
just
It just needed
aesthetic?
just a circle. We can pretend it does if you want.
That
I could
makes
try
you
and
feel
come
better.
up with yeah, I got nothing
It's
actually.
in ancient cultures, it was the symbol for eternal life. I'm probably
I
butchering
I
the
like it because it
pronunciation, but
makes a window that you can see through.
or a portal for science.
Portal. Science. Yeah.
JR is
Yep.
bringing out his science big guns tonight, and if you're not impressed, I'm sorry.
Look, Stargate is real, all right? They found it in the desert. It is real. It is behind Cheyenne Mountain. I don't care what you say. Anyway, we're going to go back to talking about dragons now, Doc, and be serious, all right?
Okay.
All right, so how did you find the guy that you hired, the design company that you used for this?
I had several friends I knew had used them, although some of them for people covers, but they had a really nice selection of like symbol covers on their website also. So yeah, so they did all 3 for the whole series and they just came out really great. So I feel like everything in the indie world is authors talking to each other. Like we all just talk all the time about who we use for covers and who we use for editing and just everything. And so I mean, you just say, hey, I'm looking for a cover designer, and people just avalanche cover
This
designers
is
at you.
true, but with the evolution and the stepping up of the indie community to compete more fully with the trad pub, you start seeing like quality improvements. And so there have also been instances because of that where people that are actual legitimate artists in their day job will read a book they like and be like, I could do a better cover for you, bro. And so you get plenty of times where the story is like they were a fan first and then they started doing the art. So, we ask because it could be kind of cool. Before we let Doc take the next question, because she's giving me the look, I can feel it already. Why do you not like people on covers?
So you want the long version or the short version?
I'm okay with either. I got all night, but I'm anti-people too. Okay. So I feel you. People in general, not people on covers.
So I mostly it's like a face. So if they're facing away, if there's like a shadow, or if they're like a space person with like a helmety thing and I can't see their face really well, it's better. And there's some people that it just looks fine, but then like sometimes something about their expression, I'm just like, I don't like that person. And then and then it's really hard to pick up the book. And then I feel like a shallow person because I don't like the cover of the book and so I don't want to read it. So it's just this bad cycle. So if I put a symbol on there, then I don't have to deal with that cycle.
This is why you should go into sci-fi, because then you could just put spaceship ass on the ship and you're good.
That's true.
Spaceship ass is the only kind of ass JR gets, so he's very attached.
Ouch, Doc, that hurt. That was low. I think I might cry myself to sleep tonight. All right.
Low, but still above your ass.
Ouch. All right, Doc, I'm going to mute you. Like, we're just going to continue this interview.
Okay. So now the dreaded 30-second elevator pitch question.
I know 30 seconds is long, so I'm just gonna keep going. So in this story, Sable is the main character, and she has been like indentured to this vicious, scummy gang boss guy in the slum of the city. And she was really young when she got there, and she has a sister who's younger than her that she's been taking care of this whole time. But she just, no matter what she does, she can't pay off the debt to this guy, and she actually hides some money from him to try and save up secret stuff to like eventually get away, and he finds it, and things are going really bad, and he ends up giving her this sort of impossible, she steals for him because this is the whole 30 seconds thing is really hard, because she has this magical ability that she can tell if someone's telling the truth or lying. So she's a thief, but only because she can like listen to people talk about what it is that they're keeping or hiding or whatever, and she can tell if they're lying about where it is and stuff like that. So she uses that to steal things for this jerk. And so anyway, he sets her this sort of impossible heist, and he's gonna like take it out on her sister if she doesn't actually get the thing. So she ends up deciding that what she really needs to do is escape. And so she ends up escaping the city with this traveling theater troupe, and then starts to travel with them around. So the story ends up being with this group that are kind of famous actors, and they kind of take her along. They need a backup female actress for just a short time, for a couple weeks, until they pick up their real actress. And so she joins them, and the fact that she can kind of feel truth and things like that, it actually ends up making her able to kind of understand the audience better, and to be able to, so she ends up learning how to act, although her first tries are really horrible. And so she travels with them, and as they're going, they discover that there's actually this huge threat of this big empire that's coming to attack, but nobody really knows this is happening, and so they have to get back and warn everybody. And yeah, so that it really spirals from there.
So
Does it?
when you say that she can sense when people's lying, is that like a magical ability? Is it just she can read like facial expressions and see body cues?
No, it's magical. So she feels if somebody lies, it feels like cold to her, and if they're telling the truth, it feels like warmer. So
Okay.
it makes it really interesting
It's a
to
new
write
game
her.
of hot and cold.
Yes. And most of the time people don't really, like, most of the time people aren't really saying anything. It's like sort of profoundly true or completely a lie. So most of the time it doesn't really impact her. But, if the gang boss is trying to explain to her why this thing that she needs to steal is so important, and every single word out of his mouth is a lie, she's like, this is interesting. So it helps. It's a really super easy way to get subtext in there, because she can tell exactly if they're lying or not. It's exciting.
That is
So
awesome.
was that originally a concept that you had in the story when you were sending it via, AOL dial-up and robots were sacrificing themselves back to your husband? Or is this something you added in revisions?
There may have been, we may have just stepped up from dial-up in there, just so you know. This is how long ago it was. It was not, actually. So like the normal magic system in the world is just this, it's sciencey. You would like it. It's like this manipulation of energy. So they can move energy from kind of like one living thing or a fire or something and put it in something else. So that's what most of the magic is. So hers was just a little bit different. And it just occurred to me as a really interesting skill to give somebody who herself, at the beginning of the story, she's just in a very powerless position. So it was nice to give her something that could hopefully someday help her to fight her way out of where she was stuck.
The cool thing about that is that only works if they know they're lying. So she could still be manipulated by someone who believes they're telling her the truth.
Yes,
and that gives
totally.
you plenty of room to still sort of subvert that expectation.
Yeah. So she, that gets played off of a few times with somebody who just really thinks they're very earnest about what they believe, and it's totally wrong.
Or they've been brainwashed.
Yeah.
I can just imagine how fun it would be to be with somebody who doesn't understand when they're lying.
Right.
Like, because there are mental disorders and personality disorders where they don't understand that they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
So
reality's a crutch. What are you going to say?
It's a crutch that can be very handy, though. So, but what is it that you think really makes your series special and stand out from all the other ones that are wonderful too?
You guys ask these just real simple, easy questions, right? There's very little it's very little fighting in books. I know that's not like normal for epic fantasy. There's very few battles. Almost none of the characters are in any way fighters. Like, they're the storytellers and the historians, and this is like the traveling theater troupe. And one of them's like a half elf, so he can like shoot a bow, but they're not, and nobody's gonna win anything in these books because of like brawn. So I think that I get a lot of comments in reviews about how much less like physical action there is in the stories. And then it's always followed with, but I wasn't bored. So it's good to know that doesn't mean boring. So in this one especially, I think it's having it all couched around this theater group, and their goal is to get people to listen to them. And so they need to put on like the best show they can at the right place with the right audience. And so there's this different dynamic, and like they have all these schemes going and they're working really hard to get to it, but nothing is based on like a physical fight at the end. It's very much, there's a lot of discussion about who tells the story that people believe. And when the people in charge are spreading lies, what is that? How do you counter that? How do you spread the truth to people and have them believe it and not just think it's just another lie or something like that? So there's just a lot of interesting. It was really fun. I mean, it feels sort of timely to discuss how you decide what the truth is that you're hearing about the world around you.
That is that's a really good, but once again, you said you loved science fiction, well, fantasy, because you can talk about those things without it being quite as in your face.
So this is sort of mystery thriller almost, with just a fantasy backdrop.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any like thriller. I don't think anybody's ever like thriller scared, but there's this definite sense of it's a definite
suspense
problem to be solved and a mystery to be solved. And the more they get into it, the more they realize that this empire, that's this looming threat, has really painted itself as not a problem, and everybody's falling for it. So yeah, there's this trying to figure out what exactly the threat is and how they can counter it in a way that's at all effective against people that are already sort of brainwashed against it.
Yeah. So what tropes do you think you really hit best with the Dragon's Reach?
Probably the found family one. Because that troop that she travels with, like, she's been in charge. She has two younger sisters actually, and she's been in charge of them and like taking care of, they're orphaned. Their parents were killed in the prologue. Parents always die in prologues. And so she's been on her own since she was 15 with these two younger sisters. And so she's like 25 in the book, so it's not YA, but so she's just been in charge this whole life and never really had anybody helping her. It was all her responsibility. And so this she meets this troop, and the fact that they come alongside her and like make this new family is like a new experience for her.
Yeah, but it definitely sounds like this is a YA appropriate book.
Yes, it is.
And
so I wrote it so that my kids can read it whenever they're interested in it. So like all my books are like PG rated at the most, but I don't like, I mean, it talks a lot about like loss and death and grief, and like there's all these adult concepts that we're talking about, or like the other one with the whole, but, I mean, did I grow up to be what I want?
Kids have those kind of concepts, like particularly after the year we just had. Kids have those kind of discussions, and even before COVID, like there's still things that can happen in a kid's life where kind of reading those things can help give them that toolbox to discuss them in real life. But also, YA was not a thing when I was in the YA age group. So I just read adult, but I think also having characters that you can want to emulate, like that maturity or how they handle conflict or something like that, is good for kids to see too. Because a lot of YA just seems to be like, well, we're just gonna make the adults messed up in the head.
Yes, like adults are this like
the adults to be overcome is a far too common trope.
Agreed.
In YA, in my opinion.
Yes.
But I say that as a parent. So.
Yeah, I read books a little differently now when you read them and they're like, oh, these parents are so unreasonable. I'm like, I kind of actually am siding on the parents with this when you lost me. Like, you shouldn't run with scissors. I'm sorry.
My very favorite it's not fantasy or sci-fi, but my very favorite TV show is Psych. And I don't know if you guys ever watched Psych.
I did.
Watch a bit of it.
When we first started, in the Blueberry. Oh my goodness.
Yes. And we first started before we had kids, and we were like always on the sun side. And then after we have kids, like we watch it now and we're like, I kind of get what the dad is talking about. Like I've switched sides.
Funny how having kids does that to you. Takes away all the fun you used to be.
Yeah.
Now I can relate to those old shows where the parents are talking, we were really fun and cool before you guys ruined everything.
Yep.
Yes, Doc, I was fun once. All right, so
One time. Exactly one time.
you hush your mouth. All right, so now onto the story itself. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the main character? What do you think makes her special in the crowded field of science or fantasy? Excuse me.
She never becomes some like kick-ass heroine who's like running around and like beating people. In fact, she's like out of her depth a lot. And every time she starts to get something, something new shows up, and she realizes again just how out of her depth she is. Like there's sort of some different layers of villains in the story, and each one is just miles ahead of her in being like cunning as to how they're going to take care of whatever needs to be done. And so she's but I think she's very like earnest, and she's incredibly protective of her sisters, and she ends up doing things to keep them safe that you're just like, you shouldn't have done that. That was a stupid thing to do. But
Being the older sibling, I understand.
Yeah, like she just has a very strong sense that she needs to keep them safe, and neither sister's in a very good situation, so she's not super crazy in what she does with it. But she ends up sort of like she saves this little creature. So I have a kobold in this book, but not like lizardy kobold. It's like based on, I think it was originally German mythology, but it's like more like a house elf. Like Dobby, but not like self-deprecating all the time. Like she has this magic to make more of something. So she loves fabric. So if you have a little fabric, she can like make you a skirt out of that fabric because she can like create more of it. With really good limitations, like she can't make more metal very easily, so she can't like make you a ton of gold or something like that. But
What does she do with beverages?
I haven't actually had her do beverages.
She doesn't do good with bottomless beer or wine for Doc because she's more classy than me. That could be fun.
I'll have to experiment with that in the last book. Yeah, but Sable ends up saving her life kind of inadvertently because she just like her instinct is just sort of to like help and to save people and to keep them safe, and so she does. And it turns out that that's the way you get the loyalty of a kobold, is if you save its life. It's like completely loyal to you, like happily, lovingly loyal to you. And so
funny
she
how
has
that
this
works.
little kobold. Yes, and the kobold's name is Pernicious, and she's just like super exuberant to be helpful about everything, and she's the most fun character to write because she's just always like, I will do whatever. Like, what can I do? And she always like makes Sable really obnoxiously bright clothes and things like that. So she's great.
So I'm guessing you're not a fan of dark clothes. Well, you live in Montana, so it's probably like state law or something. You have to wear plaid, huh?
Yep. See. Yep.
I figured that's what was going on. That makes
You
sense.
know what? I like plaid shirts. I almost wore a plaid shirt tonight. Do I need to go get my plaid so that you don't?
No, I mean, Montana law. They'd be appreciated. They might make you an honorary Montanan.
I have a bunch of. I love Eddie Bauer plaid shirts.
Mm-hmm.
It's good
It's
to
a good
know.
choice.
All
Solid
right,
choice.
so that's very Montanan, and so we might have to move the whole podcast at the rate you're going, Doc. But were there any cool secondary? She's going to get it. She's not joking. Were there any cool secondary characters that were especially memorable to you?
So Pernicious is probably the most. There you go. Perfect. The kobold is the one I get the most emails about. Definitely.
What about your favorite?
People do. The playwright. Like, he's older. His name is Atticus, and he's a fan of like classic old plays that he thinks have like deep meaning, and he's always going on about audiences and how you can change the world with the right story. And he was really fun to write because he's just a little bit quirky, but this really solid, like he kind of turns into the mentor figure that you didn't really know you wanted because you didn't know you needed a mentor to explain to you how to act correctly and what a theater troupe can do. But he's really fun to write, and he's in the whole series. So
were any of your characters based on people you know in real life? Names changed to protect the innocent or guilty?
I have not done that, and I feel like maybe I could. I mean, yeah, I haven't. I chose one name, which I won't even like share, but one of the names for kind of an like annoying, very small part side character. I needed a name for someone I knew was going to be annoying, and a friend of mine she'd been trying to be traditionally published, and she'd had an agent that ended up treating her horribly, and it had this big falling out. And so the character is named after that agent, but only because I was like, I need an annoying name, and that happened that day. So I was like, well, there it is.
It's like fate was answering your call.
It's right. It's right.
All right. So you've talked a little bit about the evil empire in the background, although sometimes evil empires get a bad rap. I'm just saying the rebels were the real terrorists and the Jedis were evil, but we'll move on. Does your story have any bad guys aside from that overarching sort of theme of the evil empire that the characters have to face? With no spoilers, obviously.
Yes. Without spoilers, that gang boss that she's indentured to at the beginning, she escapes him, but she ends up having to come back to the city. They have to come back at the end because they have to warn everyone about the evil empire. So he is still causing all sorts of trouble, and actually like ending up like making himself a little bit more legitimate in the city as a whole, and he's horrible. So he's probably one of the worst. All my kids have read my books, and they're waiting for me to kill him off. They're like, when's he gonna die? Like, they're usually very sweet, but they have this list of people in this book that, like, I'm writing the third
list
book.
for your books. That's awesome.
They do. They're like, this guy, he's got to die. And I was like, can he just be like, has his life destroyed? And they're like, no, he's got to die.
Have you seen Billy Madison?
I have not.
It's an Adam Sandler movie, but it's got the funny scene where he's calling the bully the kid he picked on in high school when he was the bully to say I'm sorry, and the guy's sitting there with a kill list that he's about ready to go do, and drawing on his face with lipstick, and he just takes the lipstick and crosses Billy's name off the list. I'm sort of picturing your kids now writing their little hit list.
Yeah, they have it. They also have a list of characters.
I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, they have characters that I'm not allowed to kill. Like, I have killed off a few of their favorite characters over the other books. And
so do you get in trouble? Do they come into the kitchen and like yell at you?
Yeah, my daughter's still mad about one. She must have read it like 4 or 5 years ago. She's still mad.
I almost feel like you need to like name gremlins after your kids so you can have them be like the murderous gremlins. It'd be hilarious. Obviously protecting their privacy, but
this is a great idea.
I love that idea. That is very adorable. Then you can call your children gremlins when you're calling them on the playground.
That's right. Maybe the dedication for the third book will be like, here you go, kids. I killed off the ones you asked for.
You finally get what you want.
I have seen some.
Here is your pound of flesh.
Back when author Twitter used to be more congenial and less everybody hating everybody, there was a couple of the funny like dedications, like this book is dedicated to my wife and kids who without them would have been finished a year sooner, or something like some funny burns that are the way they were written.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no.
One of the Percy Jackson books or something, my kids love those too. One of the ones that came out recently, the dedication's like, to my readers, I'm really sorry about the way I ended the last book. Well, not really sorry, but a little sorry.
There was a meme I saw the other day, and it was hilarious. It was, it's badass to see guys standing in front of the things they destroyed. And it had Iron Man, like Black Panther, and Thor. And then it had the two producers of Game of Thrones. It was like, that burns so hard.
But true.
Yeah.
Yes. Undeniably true. I think they even understand it.
Doc,
I think so.
You need to take a deep breath before you ask your second favorite question in this group. You ready?
Yes.
You need to warm up. Are you okay?
Nope. I don't need to warm up. I'm good. It's Georgia. It's hot down here. So, if your characters met you in a back alley, how do you think you'd fare if they knew who you were?
So I haven't finished the series, and 2 books are published. And if it was at the end of the first book where they met me, even though they're all actors, they'd probably kill me. Probably like I wouldn't stand a chance. After the end of book 2, they're still probably pretty mad. I would not want to meet
a dramatic
people.
death, right?
It would be.
It's dramatic.
I know there'd be like a poetic monologue about why I needed to die and something
I
cruel.
mean, if you're
twist
gonna
of fate
go,
or
right?
something.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
way to do it.
They probably wouldn't do it in the alley. They'd like bring me up on stage so that everyone could see.
And then make it look like an accident. And like, I didn't know how that prop arrow got switched
Ooh.
to the
Right.
real one.
We don't know how that happened. It's a big tragedy.
Oh, I totally get that. I do. It's always such a fun question to ask because it's always interesting to see how people respond. But can you give us a sneak peek into how the sausage was made for these books? Were there any cool scenes or ideas you had to cut from the final book and the final edition, and then ended up using in other ways or later?
Or want to use if you
Or
haven't
want
yet.
to use?
Yes, I plot my books out with the hope that I do not have stuff to cut. But I'm very wordy, and so I cut a lot out of the books.
I feel attacked. Why is wordy a bad thing? Stop
It's not
using
right.
those judgy eyes on us.
I'm not saying anything. I adore David Weber.
Yeah, right.
And there are very few people more wordy than David.
That is true. So but I did have, when I was finishing up Dragon's Reach, there is a character that comes in the next book who I really wanted to like put this like seed. He's not even named in the first book, but I wanted him, when he showed up in the second book, I wanted people to be like, oh, I know who you are. Like, you're significant. And then it could spiral from there. And I was really excited about it. And so before I was going to publish, I was going to go back in and just make a scene where he interacts with Sable, and he actually was going to give her some books to give to Atticus, that playwright. And I wrote the scene. And then I couldn't decide where to put the scene. And I was down to the wire with having to get it published. And so I swear I put that scene in the book. But when I got to book 2 and I got to the point where this character shows up again, and I was all excited to reference, oh, Sable knows who he is because he's the one who gave her the book, blah, blah, blah. And I went back and I like read through Dragon's Reach like over and over and searched, and it's not there. So I had to rewrite his whole introduction in book 2 because now suddenly nobody knows who this guy is, because he did show up, but like even more nameless and in passing in the first book than possible. So I have a missing part. I don't know what happened to it. It's going to be like someday I'm going to find some weird version that didn't get saved right, and there my scene's going to be. But, so I had to, yeah.
Goodness. So there you go. That's like the opposite of what we normally get.
Right,
But
the
that's
opposite.
a great story.
Yeah.
Still,
It happens, and when you have so many editions going, and if you're going back and forth with a publisher, and that kind of stuff happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll ask my kids sometimes. I'll be like, did that conversation end this way or that way? And they'll be like,
you know what? You should make your kids make the wiki.
I should, because they'd know what happened. And I'd be like, oh, really? Is that
It could be
that's the
like-
version
I
that went out?
think DJ Butler has his kids run his Patreon.
I mean, it could totally be like a homeschooling thing. Like you're learning
Right.
marketing and
There you go.
web something. I mean, I'm pulling this
Something.
out of my backside, but I mean, I'm
Science.
sure you could do it, right?
Editing
Science.
and plotting and
Mhm.
History.
organization skills. I can come up with this kind of stuff. I'm
You
good.
could even
Right.
I know
call
how
it
to do
history. It's fake history, so they're teaching themselves how to learn history. It's the historiography
this.
section.
No. They're
Mhm.
teaching them how to learn and organize facts and information.
Something
See,
like
if we
that. We're
make
gonna
it
go
like
with it.
sound like core curriculums, then yeah, we do that vague. They're organizing and something.
See?
And if we wanted to sound on like a resume, then we need to go with their marketing and developing global histories of imaginary worlds.
Nice. So, what can you tell us about the universe writ large? You mentioned a little bit about the kingdom and the hidden shadow empire coming for them. So, in many of the worlds where the stories take place, the world is as much a character as the protagonist or antagonist. So, what all can we expect besides dragons? Because it's in the title.
There's very few dragons, actually. So don't get your hopes up about dragons if you're going to read it. There's one dragon in the first series, and he shows up on and off. But like the dragons in my world are smog type dragons, not like How to Train Your Dragon type dragons, and so they're very like you can't really kill them. Like they're too big and too strong. So even like the magic people don't really have a defense against them. Thankfully, there's not very many dragons, so they show up sometimes and cause chaos, but they're not trying to kill everyone or something like that.
So I've heard that's because there's like some sort of cosmic law that you can only have so many dragons written about in literature, and Anne McCaffrey used most of them in her series, so there just wasn't a lot left for everyone else.
She did. That was the problem. Yeah.
See, she was amazing with them.
We're happy to let her have them. She did great.
Doc is like it's part of her one-man fan club, so I just give her grief.
I am. I was a werewoman. I'm technically a werewoman, so you better sit down and shut up.
I don't know if that means we'll talk offline. All right. So, Dragon's Reach is clearly part of the series. I know because it says so on Amazon, and you told us so repeatedly. There are currently 3 books out in this series, but is their story done? Where do you see this series and universe going?
Yeah, so the 3rd one is still on pre-order. It'll be out in May, assuming I get it written by May, which maybe. The next, I'll be staying in this universe. Like I like it. I feel no need to leave. So the next one will probably be back for this is like 400 years before the other series. And the series are all standalone, but they do reference each other kind of back and forth. So that's fun. But the next series will be again in the future, probably more about the different keepers. I have a fun idea about a female keeper and an elf who she's friends with and adventures. So that's where it'll go.
Awesome.
All right. So in the side chat, if you could see it, dear listener, she's trying to educate me about all things Pern in like 500 characters or less. And it's not going well. She needs more room. So we'll talk to the people at StreamYard to see if they can give her what she needs. But we know
Let's roll over.
Yeah, we know every literary universe has its own internally consistent rules of science, technology, and magic. At least the good ones do. And the ones that don't, we shake our heads and throw the books at the wall. Or Kindles. That's happened before. I might be on my 3rd Kindle. Oops. So what sort of technology and magic can we expect from these books?
Get a Nook. They last longer.
Yeah, but Bezos would get really mad at me.
Good thing I don't care about Bezos.
Jeez. What kind of heresy are you speaking? Anyway.
Kind that involves him not signing my paycheck.
This is true.
He sends me a lot of paychecks, so I kind of like him.
You know what? When somebody cuts me a paycheck, I'm a lot more tolerant of them.
Right? I'm like, oh, you're excused from a lot.
So what sort of tech can we expect from these books and magic?
So it's a pretty like probably typical fantasy world. It's pretty medieval. We don't have a lot of technology going on. And really all of the magic. I have one character who this doesn't follow and it drives me crazy. And she's just a side character and I don't know how to solve this. But all of the magic, really, it's all like transference of energy. So like my physics background, it's like how would the energy transfer? How much would be lost in the transfer? Because there's all sorts of energy loss, and it causes like them pain when they do it and stuff. So it's
thermodynamics.
Yes, it's a lot of thermodynamics.
Yeah. As a chemist, I took an entire semester of thermodynamics, and I actually did enjoy it.
Me too. I know, it was interesting.
It made calculus 3, which is partial derivatives, make sense, and why we care about it.
Finally, a use for that.
Yes.
So I took Betty Crocker calculus and chemistry for non-science majors, so I didn't have to do any of that. And we just got a lot of pitying looks from the RAs that were teaching the class. They're like, "You poor children."
Yeah, well, I had to take quantum mechanics. It has to turn. I haven't yet had to use it, but I'm waiting.
I took the history of history though, so historiography, man. So there's that.
I mean,
that's sort of the same thing.
If I could pat you on the head, I would.
Is this another short joke, Doc?
No, it's a all cute little bachelor's of arts thinks he had it hard.
I mean, you didn't sit through that class, right? You don't know how horrific the history of history was for us. But let's ask her about her science and stuff, all right, Doc? Jeez.
Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, question 29. No
Of
more
all the
patronizing
magic we
JR.
invented in the universe, which one would you want to use on a daily basis?
That's a good question. So none of it's like super powerful. This isn't like books for people who want like the mage who takes over the world with his amazing powers. I have one character from my first series named Will who can actually feel what other people are feeling at any given time. And
That's handy with teenagers.
yes, right. And so it really helps him like understand the people around him because he's the one who gets stuck on the grassland and it's like in this foreign land where everyone hates people from where he's from and blah blah blah. So but really interesting like him realizing how like similar because he has to go to this sort of clan chief guy who he thinks is like nothing like himself. And so it's really cool as they go through the book and they develop this friendship and he can to like feel what somebody else is feeling. It makes it a lot harder to discount everything that these people that feel so foreign to him, like it makes it harder for him to discount the things that they're thinking and seeing because he can like actually, if he tries at all, he can feel how they're feeling. And so when he's in a bad mood, sometimes he like will like purposely like, I'm not gonna feel what you're feeling because I don't want to know. I want to continue to disagree with you. But I pretty much stay at home all the time because I work from home and my kids are homeschooled. Like, so I guess I would mostly just feel my family's and they're all pretty open anyway. So usually I know what they're feeling, but it'd be cool.
So the next question is, how would you abuse it in daily life?
I would use it to I would use it to manipulate people's answer to what do you want for dinner and to like the simplest solution.
Yep. My son's eating the same
peanut
thing
butter and
for
jelly
3 nights
again?
in a row. So
yeah, that's perfect. They're very easy to cook for, actually. They're very like they're already there. I have to come up with a better diabolical use for it because yeah.
See, that diabolical use makes total sense to me, but then again, my son has asked for miso soup with rice ramen and meatballs 3 nights in a row.
Nice.
Is that good or bad?
When it's good, you just got to keep having it.
Okay.
I don't know. He's happy and it fits his diet plan, so I'm not gonna worry.
There you go.
It's somewhat healthy-ish. There's no sugar.
We will take that as a win then.
So, do you have fantastic creatures in your universe? I mean, you talked a little bit about the dragons, but are there other fantastical creatures?
So there's elves and dwarves that are very they're pretty Tolkien-y. Like the dwarves are very Tolkien kind of dwarves, and the elves, some of the elves are more whimsical than Tolkien would have ever made his elves, but they're fun.
So are they tall elves like Tolkien or short elves like TSR?
Tall, like, well, they're like human size. They're not like super taller than people, but yeah, tall. So but they live in the forest and they love the trees and very elvy kind of stuff. But like when Will is on the grasslands, he actually meets a grass elf who just loves grass. Like she loves grass so much she just talks about it all the time, and which I really needed because I was like,
I'm picturing now like a stoned hippie, like when you say that for some reason. Maybe I hung out with the wrong people growing up. I don't know.
Different
you were
kind of
a
grass.
history major.
Yeah. So there's those, and there's goblins, and there's the kobolds, and I don't know that there's any like super duper brand new creative creatures that you've never heard of. I made this one thing, it was like a bory and it tried to like lure women in to kill them. I needed a bad guy for a scene. So
that sounds very evil.
It was evil. I didn't like him.
Unless they had it coming. I mean, that is sometimes a valid defense.
What?
Yeah.
Some people just deserve to die. Her kids already have the list. They know what's up.
Yeah, go eat some pineapple on your pizza.
That's true.
That is how you end up evil. I'm not saying it made you evil, but I'm not saying it either, Doc.
I might have started that way. Pretty sure if you
Factory
ask my brother,
insult.
she started this way.
All right,
but
so
what?
go ahead. I was going to steal your question to get the show moving, but I mean, if you're ready to do your job before we fire you again.
Jerry, you can't fire me. Your mother likes me better than you, and
This is
she
true,
handles the
sadly,
book.
actually.
So
You should never have let her tell you that.
you know what? It's okay. So, with your dragon, did you just let folklore inspire you, or did you, come up with any fun twists on your own, or nightmares, or the ramblings of teenage children?
I would say most of it's pretty solidly based in like 80s and 90s fantasy, except like not nice dragons. I know there's a lot of nice dragons in those things, but dragons are always evil.
Okay.
Just always should be evil. But no, I think most of it is like there are so many really fun tropes that we all love about those older stories. And so what I really wanted to do was create a world that had all those tropes that we could that felt like it had been brought back to life, right? That it didn't feel like we were reading a book that was 30, 40 years old, however old it's been.
I know.
But it like new characters, like new dwarves that are especially dwarvish with a V,
Yeah.
like Tolkien says, dwarvish. And that we could fall in love with because they're gruff and they love rocks and tunnels and jewels.
Flannel?
And flannel. They would totally wear flannel.
I love flannels. The one
we
thing
would
I
let
don't
them-
like about the South is it's very difficult to wear flannel in the South.
I don't know how you survive. I don't do hot, only cold.
So do your dragons breathe fire?
It's like 70 it's like 60 degrees in there.
Janice, do your dragons breathe fire?
They do.
And you said
And they're big.
You relied on like 80s and 90s tropes. So does that mean you didn't watch in the 80s Puff the Magic Dragon or Pete's Dragon? Because they were friendly. I did dragons.
Actually. They were very friendly. That is true. But no, it was really Smog. I mean, Smog just like
he ruined all of his dragons for you.
Smog is kind of awesome. Smog is much better than Pete's Magic Dragon.
But Pete had some good coffee he made later in his life. That's all I'm going to say. You've never heard of Pete's Coffee?
I have. I just didn't like it.
You clearly have no taste. Pineapple on pizza. What do I see? That's all I need.
You know what? My bourbon collection is much more expensive than yours.
That's because I'm cheap. I like cheap beer. But anyway, we're not here to discuss her poor liquor taste and my excellent taste in adult beverages. So as this interview is winding down, before we wrap this up, you could stick your nose back down. It doesn't need to go that high in the air. Before we wrap this up, was there anything about Dragon's Reach that we didn't ask that you want to tell us?
Nope.
All right, so we did our job then. All right, last question. Is Dragon's Reach available?
Job.
Woohoo! I get to double my pay now. Was there any audio
from half pay?
Oh crap! That means it's like only 3/4 of where I started. You and your math.
Ooh, you're learning.
Were there audiobooks available for this?
Yes, actually. Bryce O'Connor, who we talked about, who introduced us to each other, he helped produce the audiobooks for the Keeper Chronicles, which is Tim Gerard Reynolds narrates those, and he's awesome. And then Kate Redding is doing the Keeper Origins, and so the first 2 books are out in audio. The second one just came out a couple weeks ago. So, and the third will come out whenever I get the book written. Yeah. So those are. They did a great job.
The origin story would be difficult, I would think, for narration decisions, because if you have a female main character, traditional wisdom says you get a female narrator. But if you've got every book has a different main character, do you go with making the right gender for the narrator or keeping one through the whole series? And there are some people that'll feel both ways on that, and you can't please everybody. So you kind of put yourself in a little bit of a pickle right there.
Yeah. So my first series, it's 2 males and then a female main character, and they each get a solid book. Like, it doesn't go back and forth between them. They each one has their own book. So that one, they did do the whole thing with Tim Gerard Reynolds, and he did a great job with the female book. It's the 3rd book of the series, and he did a great job with that one too. But then Keeper Origins, it is all Sable's point of view. So we just have a female And so they did decide, though, since the entire series is a female character, we didn't go with Tim again. So they found a female narrator for it too,
Okay.
which is fine. I don't have really strong feelings about it, but I know audiobook readers can get like listeners, I guess, not readers, can get a little touchy about what you do with their narrators.
I think it depends on the skill level of the narrator, whether or not they do good on the gender. Especially when it's opposite what their natural voice gender is. But I think it's just what throws me the most is if you bring in somebody else with a completely different style.
Yeah, if you switch,
and like I've listened to a couple of series where they had a completely different style, and that kind of threw me off when they said to switch. Yeah. But I mean, because I listen to audiobooks 20 to 30 hours in a week. I have a problem. I'm not fixing it.
It's just like kindergarten where your teacher reads to you. It's story time all over again for you, Doc.
Except this time I get to make fireballs while she's and
true.
I actually pay attention better.
Fireballs are always fun unless it's your job that you blow up and your boss gets really mad. So
you know what? The 20-30 foot plume of purple smoke was not my fault. So we're all good.
I'm just saying, did the fire inspector say that, or is that just your cover up?
Oh, we didn't even bother bringing him out. We got that under control.
So OSHA does not know. Understood. We will not talk about this anymore. All right. Well, how did you make Janice on your? Did you bribe her before the show? Is that what's going on here? Am I just late to the party to figure this out?
It's not my fault that I have instant rapport with amazing women.
I still think you set me up with Jennifer, so I think this is all part of your evil plan. But all right. So before we let you go, we want to let you, dear listeners, know that your thoughts matter too. So please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. The right reviews, your reviews help the right reader find the right books. So, and rumor has it, for every 100th review, the author gets a free unicorn. And I really think Janice wants one for each of her children. So she just needs all the reviews, because she couldn't give to just one. That would be wrong. They'd fight.
It would be. It would.
So each gremlin needs their own unicorn. So we need you to step it up a little bit.
Exactly.
All right. And if you review it on Amazon already, wouldn't hurt to hop on over to BookBob or Goodreads or wherever else you review books. Make a blog and review them there. Start a podcast, whatever.
Barnes & Noble.
Do they have a review section?
Yeah.
Their website is not very user-friendly, Doc, all right? They just need to get with the 20th century.
You're just not user-friendly.
Also true, but that's besides the point. We're not here to talk about my issues, all right? All right. So, Janice, as publishing as J.A. Andrews, so you know what you're looking up to your listener, can you tell our audience how they can find you?
Yep. I have jaandrews.com is my website, which is not as well kept up as it should be, but it exists, and you can find links to signed books, or there's a decent number of blog posts that are just my newsletter. I have way more fun than most authors that I know writing my newsletter. Like I'm totally entertained by my own newsletter. So sometimes that makes it onto my website when I remember. So that's fun. We talk about weird words and stories about when I went to Verizon and actually had the guts to tell the guy there that I was an author and his response and that kind of stuff. So that was fun. And then, so I'm there. I'm on Facebook, just J.A. Andrews. It looked like me. If it looks like a man as an author, that's not me, because there's 2 male J.A. Andrews authors.
You don't judge.
And yeah, but I don't look like them. And then,
do they write dragons though?
No, mystery stuff.
So you
and actually,
have
one
more
writes
fun
romance. What'd you say?
So you have more fun than they do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I can't do the romance anymore, so we long story. But all right, and as usual, dear listener, the show notes will include all of her links, so you can stalk her as you do. So what kind of stuff? Just because you mentioned newsletter, and I like to encourage people, if they like an author, to sign up for their newsletter. Yep. It helps them be able to ride the tide of the insanity that's happening in our culture, and they can weather that storm with you, dear reader, together. If they have they can sell to directly. So what kind of stuff do you put in your newsletter that has you so entertained?
It's usually just little stories. There's a fruit fly that's like buzzing my face.
But it's Montana, so it's literally as big as a house. No lie.
Yeah, they grow big. It's often just little snippets of my life that I find entertaining, or something that I've done that was sort of ridiculous that I feel like needs to be shared. Occasionally it's about my books, but it's often more like just something really fun that's going on. So it comes out once a week. If you sign up, you get a free short story called Ghost of the White Woods. There's another story called The Black Horn. So they're both free. Depending on which newsletter sign up you find, you will get one of those two stories. And then if you email me, I'll just send you the other one. I was cleaning up links again too, and there's this one I can't figure out where people are signing up from, and they keep getting one of the stories. I don't know where they're coming from. But
it's magic.
Yeah, it is. It's just like it's out there in the interwebs somewhere living. So yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think you got to be creative with the newsletter so you don't just blah and go boring. So my readers get my therapy hour. I mean, they get stories of what happened to me when I was in the Army. So I mean, you got to do things. You got to do things, keep it interesting. So funny stories about life in Montana. I mean, all the plaid you can handle, people. So go sign up.
Exactly.
Hey, I like plaid, JR.
I mean,
everybody likes
Montana,
plaid,
aren't you?
I
thought we established this.
If I can't drive in snow.
Oh,
we'll get you a horse. It'll be okay. You were a debutante. I'm sure you ride horses. That's totally what you do. All right.
I do not ride side saddle. I'm going to just say that and leave that there.
Scandalous. No wonder they kicked you out. All right. So you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters and tack blades. Again, that's anchor.fm/blasters and blades. We're on the Twitter at SF_fantasy_show. Again, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can send all of your hate mail to Doc Cisca at blastersandbladepodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook, where all the shenanigans happen, at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. And sometimes Doc drunk posts. So it gets really entertaining. You can support the show at anchor.fm/blasters tack blades, much like a Patreon system where you can support us on a reoccurring monthly basis to help keep the lights on and the show coming. Or you can do a one-time donation over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley, and tell me that it's for the podcast. And we will keep Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender.
Because you're not a quitter. That's right. And they will argue.
I'm not a quitter.
They will argue back and forth on the merits of which beverage will get them more intoxicated while I sober drive this thing into the oblivion. All right, Doc, bring it home.
Eventually, we need to stop leaving the brain damaged person to be the sober one.
I mean, I'm not saying I don't drink. I just don't do it on the air like you do. That's all.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber, the Comic Geek, J.R. Handley, I'm Cisca. This was a Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, all things that go boom, pineapple on pizza, torture, and most importantly, torturing JR.
They're plotting against me, people. Send help.
There's no plotting needed. It's just easy. It's like breathing.